Morning. I'm KC. This is Keystone Curiosity, where we talk about all things unique to the state of Pennsylvania. Today's episode is going to be about Cherry Springs State Park.
Welcome to Keystone Curiosity, where we explore the life, land, and culture of my beloved home state. Pennsylvania has something to offer everyone, and is living proof that the world is a beautiful place. You just need to take the time to find it. Located about 16 miles south of Coudersport, Cherry Springs State Park is one of the 7 state parks that reside on the grounds of the Susquehannock State Forest.
The earliest inhabitants to this area were from the Susquehannock tribe, and after them the Seneca Nation of the Iroquois Confederacy. They would be forced out through a series of treaties as the U.S. began expanding westward in the late 1700s.
In 1818, a man by the name of Jonathan Edgecombe was hired by the Ceres Land Company to settle along the trail to Coudersport. He selected the area that would later be known as Cherry Springs and began clearing the forest, using the logs to build a tavern.
When his contract expired in 1821, Edgecombe and his wife would leave the area. The tavern, however, would continue to serve the weary travelers of the bridle path that would one day become Route 44.
The following years would see the path grow to a turnpike. The tavern and the surrounding area would become known as Edgecombe's Clearing until it received a post office in 1873. The locals would then petition the Postal Service to change the name to Cherryville for the black cherry trees that grew nearby. But seeing as there was already a Cherryville in Northampton County, they settled on another name, Cherry Springs.
It was during this time that Cherry Springs and the rest of Potter County became known as a sportsman's paradise.
The abundance of game and fish drew an outdoorsman from all over. This rise in popularity led to the building of the Cherry Springs Hotel in 1874, which stood across the road from the original tavern. But as it is with all things, this paradise would not last. In the late 1880s, the lumber industry began showing up in the area, salivating at the untouched timber that grew there.
Now, if you've already seen my episode on the Pennsylvania Grand Canyon, which sits about 30 miles east of Cherry Springs, you may already know where this is going. If not, then allow me to enlighten you in the fact that all throughout history, people kind of suck.
Lumberjacks would spend their days cutting down the trees and sending the logs down the rivers to the sawmills at Williamsport, leaving little more than thin brush and withering treetops. This would be a part of the area of the state that would become known as the Pennsylvania Desert, which was subject to fires as debris dried and the embers from railroads would catch the tinderbox that was left. Not even the Cherry Springs Hotel was spared from the wild flames. It burned to the ground in 1897, and the property was left abandoned.
But if that was the end of the story, then I never would have bothered telling you.
The turn of the century saw a rise in conservationist efforts all across the Commonwealth. The Pennsylvania General Assembly passed legislation authorizing the purchase of unceded lands for forest reservations. This led to the purchase of the first lands for the Susquehannock State Forest in 1901. Over 120 years later, the forest lands covered 265,000 acres across Potter County. Like most of the state parks in northern Pennsylvania, the development of Cherry Springs into the park we know today is largely attributed to the Civilian Conservation Corps, a work relief program from FDR's New Deal established in 1933. The CCC set up a camp at Cherry Springs in May of 1933. The enrollees of the camp would build roads, hiking trails, and picnic areas, even going so far as to recreate the historic log tavern of Jonathan Edgecombe. The camp would close in 1937, leaving behind a proud legacy that, through the efforts of the enrollees, Cherry Springs Park, formerly a clearing, has been transformed into a park of which the people of Potter County can be proud of.
The years following would see the return of the sportsman's paradise reminiscent to that of days of old.
But since the 1990s, the park has attracted visitors of an entirely different sort.
One night about 1 a.m, the park supervisor, Chip Harrison, noticed a man looking through a telescope. When he approached and asked the man what he was doing, the astronomer informed him that he had noticed a black patch on the nighttime satellite photos in north-central Pennsylvania. Cherry Springs State Park is in that patch.
With the closest city being 60 miles away in Williamsport, the skies over Cherry Springs have almost no light pollution. This level of darkness is unavailable to over 95% of Europe and the continental United States. Under the best condition, 10,000 stars are visible to the naked eye, with the Milky Way being so bright that it casts a discernible shadow. As its reputation grew, the park began to do what they could to accommodate. This led to the establishment of the Dark Sky Fund in 1999, which funds the park's improvements to enhance the stargazing and astronomy experience. The funds have been used to install a rotating 15-foot observatory dome, 2 12-foot clamshell domes, and multiple concrete pads all across the park with the placement of telescopes, or cameras in my case. They would even go so far as to replace all of the white lights of the park with red bulbs.
In 2000, the DCNR would officially name Cherry Springs a dark sky park, a reputation that would only gain in fame as the National Public Observatory picked it as the pilot to its Stars and Parks program in April of 2001.
The DCNR would continue its efforts of preserving this reservation of the stars with the acquisition of a nearby airfield that would allow for an increase in program opportunities at the park and the development of the astronomy field, which offers a 360-degree unobstructed view of the sky. This would see Cherry Springs gain international fame in 2008 as it was named the second International Dark Sky Park by the International Dark Sky Association, with the first being Natural Bridge's National Monument in Utah.
With the drive to the park resting at just over 2 hours from either Punxsutawney or Bloomsburg, you will want to do your proper research and planning beforehand to ensure the best possible conditions for viewing. Help with this can be found at cleardarkskies.com, which I will include a link to down below. And while you're there, please feel free to donate whatever you're comfortable with to the Dark Skies Fund to help maintain this rare treasure for generations to come. That's going to wrap it up for today's episode. Thank you guys so much for watching. As per the usual, if you have any suggestions on where you'd like to see me go next, feel free to leave them in the comments below. In the meantime, hit that like and subscribe so that you can receive notifications about anything else near Cherry Springs State Park or all across the state of Pennsylvania itself. In the meantime, y'all have a good one.